네, 이제 2부를 시작하겠습니다. 2부의 첫 발제는 오만의 문화예술교육 현황 및 향후 전망, 위기 속 예술교육의 역할과 힘, 팬데믹 전후 디지털 문화예술교육으로의 전환이라는 주제로 모하메드 아람리 술탄 카부스 대학교 예술교육 전공 교수님께서 발제를 해주시겠습니다. Now we'll begin session 2, the first presentation on the topic of culture and arts education in Oman, current state and future projections will be given by Professor Mohammad Al-Amri of Art and Education at Sultan Qaboos University. 1부와 마찬가지로 발제하는 동안 질문은 오픈 톡방에 남겨주시면 질의응답 시간에 전달하도록 하겠습니다. If you have any questions during his presentation, please leave your question in the open chat room, just like in the first session. 그럼 모하메드 아람리 교수님을 큰 박수로 모시겠습니다. Please welcome Professor Mohammad Al-Amri with a big round of applause.
Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank the Korean Ministry of Culture as well as Korean Art Education Culture Service. I'm happy really to be here. I actually participate in the first weeks of International Week in Paris. That's since 12 years ago. I'm really happy to be to visit Seoul for second time. Actually, my presentation is about culture and art education in Oman. I will describe overall topic about culture in Oman and with reference actually to the situation of pandemic and how what we did in this situation. My presentation will include the following topic. First, I will start with the thought about culture, general thought about culture and arts, and then about Oman education, maybe someone not aware where is Oman, and then about the old names of Oman, which is included, to give you brief names about it, and then concept and type of culture in Oman. I will present some photo images so you could understand more about diversity and different type of culture in Oman, as well as how we promote culture and art in Oman by establishing different institutions, different activities, and then we see how culture meet art and art meet culture in our places, and then we will try briefly actually to talk about art education in Oman in general, and then we'll see what we did about this issue in teaching art education with COVID-19, and then conclusion and recommendation and what kind of lesson we could learn from this pandemic. Let's start with some important quotation about art and culture. As you know, art and culture have been fundamental for a human being and for human experience. And from the beginning, actually, of the human life. It is necessary not just for teaching and learning, but no, for more than that, and through culture and through art itself should be, integrating part for life. Art also has been specific function beyond being and decorative or production of art. one of the primary function of art has been to tell our human story, to help us to know who are we and how we and what we want to be. Therefore, as the Seoul Agenda confirmed in 2010 that art education can make direct contribution to the solving a lot of problems, including this pandemic or our crisis now. Regarding the crisis, actually, we don't have to think about the crisis just in terms of health. There is a lot of crisis and problematic problem. Even the war, art should play the significant role in order to promote art and promote life, actually, and human being. Therefore, I mean, we should think beyond the concept of art and culture. Therefore, the term culture is, I mean, there is different actually definition, different about the culture itself, and different meaning. Even the culture itself, there is visual culture, hearing culture, different type of culture around us. We don't have to think or limit ourselves in the concept of culture in terms of product. Also, there is other concept of culture, I mean, like poem. I mean, sometimes we don't think that piece of culture or part of culture. Therefore, what we see it around us, all part of our life, and the concept of culture actually become more and more big concept, including everything. And therefore, Alton Eisner, in his book, Art and Creation of Mind, referred to two kind of relevant concept for culture, actually. One of them, anthropological, and the other one, the biology. Therefore, culture in the anthropology sense is shared way of life, but the term of culture in the biology sense refer to the medium of the growing thing. Therefore, I mean, in order to understand the culture itself, we must bring these two concepts together in order to make contribution to the knowledge and to our life. Therefore, also art and culture make the possible share a way of life, sense of the being and community, and also they are medium for growing. When we believe that culture is like medium of growing and developing, so we know how we could deal with it, actually. My concern about the issue here, first we have to understand the concept, and then how we could integrate these two concepts together, like art, culture-based education, in order to improve the art education or improving our understanding of the culture itself and art. Sometimes culture including art and art including culture. What I mean by that, I mean forming, who form who? Art forming culture or culture forming art. This, issue, need to be understood in order to understand these two concepts. Sometimes people see it as different concept. And I think what we need to understand, and as from the beginning, from the speaking of the UNESCO director, he said integrating culture with art. So how we could integrate them in terms of in terms of teaching, in terms of producing art or whatever. So the work in the art itself, not only the way of creating or performing or producing, it is a way of creating life or our life by expanding out all these concepts consciously and shaping our disposition and also our quiet of meaning, establishing contact with other and sharing culture. That's why I'm here, and my colleague come here to share some aspect of culture around us. So the quality of the work of art and culture more broadly, I mean, as I said before, speaking, they are not only a part of geographical or location, but it is linked to the history itself. That's why, and understanding the concept, because each country has their own culture, okay? And the culture is developed since the time from the first to the end. Therefore, understanding this, I mean, the between, I mean, the what was called between one point to other point, you need to understand the history and development of that concept. Oman, I bring this, maybe people not aware. Oman is like part, one country from the Middle East, and nearby Saudi Arabia, Dubai, below Iran, and near Yemen actually, and the last country actually of our first country for you to reach the Middle East. The old actually name of Oman called Majan, mean the land of copper. And then there is other name called Mazun. Mazun is like the cloud, mean cloud. And then, which is like rich, greenish, rich trees, whatever that it was like this, not in this time. And these names, I mean, as you know, Oman, they know it as now current time Oman or Sultanate of Oman. We called it Sultanate of Oman, but more famous or more known word Oman as O alphabet order of the countries. Oman actually has old history in the art being, I mean, discovered in different places in Oman. This kind of art go back thousand years actually. And there is other example here. And as you see, it's like native or naive art for old human being. And now I would like to talk about culture itself, Oman, and the richness of the culture. Oman go back thousand years, and this year actually Oman has also got a variety of culture. Not only one culture, it seems to be in one culture actually, and in harmony shape. But art, I mean culture, there is different people there, come from different root. Therefore, I mean, even we are in different type of cultures or roots, we live in harmony. And Oman, one country, peace country in the Middle East, without any problem or war or whatever. We also be beside any problem, and we try to solve problem between one to other country in order to make the life better. Also, Oman has different kind of heritage or culture heritage. You can see it in the sea or architecture or calligraphy, or even, I mean, you can see it in the environment. And that different type of culture make Oman, I mean, more rich actually in that term. And now I would like also to think it has been very clear from the beginning. His Majesty Sultan Qaboos, who are passed away on 2020 January, last January, he make this speech about the culture, about the identity, and the main concern here is we have to think beyond itself. I mean, culture as concept. Therefore, when we think about culture behind the building or behind the castle or behind, we will see that culture from different perspective. We don't have to see culture from only just, from outside form. Therefore, art and culture is beyond its form. And here, we'd like to present briefly that some institution or agency or club, whatever, association, being established in Oman since our evolution in 1970. The first Ministry of Heritage and Culture was established on 1975. This ministry been changed actually names since that time. The first name like this, now called it Culture and Sport, like here, okay, and Youth. And before that, it called Culture and Heritage. So, this different ideology, different leader, changing even this direction. Art now included in that new Ministry of Culture without mentioning art in the title. And this may making problem later on. And also there is like Youth Art Studio. It was in 1980. And Youth Theater as well in 1980. And these three under the Ministry of Culture and Heritage, actually. And also the club, Culture Club, which is for both those who are graduate from university could be member in that club. Art Education also department established in 1991. We are actually, when we compare ourselves to our neighbor countries, actually we are start too late to establish this kind of art and culture relationship. Also, we have Omani Society of Fine Art, which is established in 1993. Unfortunately, this one and the youth and theater now no more exist because we're changing the name of the ministry to other ministry name. And they decide to integrate them in like center of youth. And this center of youth, including all type of art, theater, music, whatever that art is. And also we have like, this also was announced by His Majesty Sultan Qaboos in 2013 to build specific college for traditional craft and industry. But even though this one, no future for this college because the new leader come with new agenda and new thoughts. Therefore, they decide to frozen this project in future time. Also, Omani Society for Cinema and Theater is the active. But most of this like private association, not the governmental association. People try to promoting art, different art by their participation and by their work individually. Also, we have Omani Society for Writers and Literacy which established in 2006. Also, we have Public Authorities of Craft and Industry, which also established in 2003. This no more exists as well. So, by the time what we achieved, some people may demolish this kind of achievement, unfortunately. Also, we have, I mentioned that before. Also, we have, some museum in Oman. This kind of museum promoting culture and art at the same time. We have the first museum in Oman established in 1974, called Oman Museum. Also, we have a national museum called 1978. And we have Omani France Museum. which is established in 1992. National History of Museum, Children's Museum specifically, and Suhar Fort Museum, Beit Zubair Museum, Beit Muzna Gallery, which is promoted as well art and show art there for different people in Oman or from outside Oman. Beit Al Baranda Museum. This house, Beit mean house. Beit mean house. This Beit was for the consul of American consul in 19th or in 19th. So I mean they turn it to the museum, place and people museum as well, which all this kind rich of culture and heritage actually and identity of Oman. National Museum of Oman, this new one actually, and the last, not least, the project of Oman across the eggs, which is already been established as building, now trying to complete what the collection of that museum. Anyway, now I'm going to take you with different images to show the rich of the culture of Oman. This is like costume, Omanic dress for ladies, each one representing different region in Oman. So different region has different actually costume. That's why I mean, and even sometimes different gallery the women wear. Here, some image, other image. Mask already there from the beginning. Some photo of the Omani. This, I mean, the cloth was heritage from time to time by generation to other actually. And people, even now, they wear some like this. And also, they try to develop it in terms of shape, color, and decoration. Therefore, I mean, Omani people more close to their own culture and proud of culture, always. Even when sometimes participate in event outside, they prefer to wear the costume of Oman. Here some metals work in different shape. This now become more modern. I bring some photo to show you the old sense of the metal here. This other one, and this is called Kumma cup. What I'm trying also to present later on, artists not far from this heritage actually. Most of artists try to use this kind of icon to present the sense of culture and heritage of Oman. Here some building or castle, sorry. Since invasion of Portuguese in Oman, old in 1970 something, we learn from them how we built actually the castle as well, and then the castle everywhere, around 500 castle in Oman. And this one also, and one of them already make it as for UNESCO, not touchable heritage. Here the new mosque, actually, I bring it here to see the architecture in modern sense, but still taking from the culture heritage route. And this some dance, the traditional dance in Oman, cloth, and this is called khangar. Normally we wear it in the occasion, special occasion, like Eid, I don't know, celebrating Ramadan, and so on. Or wedding time. So, creating our culture meeting art and art meeting culture. We have to understand this harmony between both of them. I just show you some example how the art meeting in our individual Omani artist investigation. Each artist also always investigating culture in their work. So when you bring the culture item in the painting, for example, you try to integrate into them as individual thought. We have a lot of examples, so I just choose one example. Later on, I will present it. And also the group work for Omani, like national project, working for national project, culture project, whatever. I will show some foreign artists as well, oriented. They use some of Omani culture heritage, culture artistic heritage investigated by the scholar, by designer, by researchers also there. Culture heritage in national curriculum, we have specific unit for teaching, for expression about culture heritage itself. Not only theoretical in theoretical term, but also in practice term. Also, we have fund project from the government and from private sector, which support special the identity of Oman, special the vision Oman 2040, more focus in the identity, more focus on the education and learning and culture. So we have some plenty of resource to build up. This is some example. This for artists called Fakhriya Al-Yahyai. She is the first actually PhD holder in Oman in fine art. She graduated from England. This work was collected actually as collection from San Francisco Women Museum, and you see the richness of color and the cloth and all this traditional cloth, but how she tried to bring it in the sense of modernity. Performance art as well here. Also for her, she tried to integrating the opera in Oman with some clothes, with the music, some metal work with cloth as well, with the building, architecture building. So here, other example for the work, group work. This group work, like trying to paint on the old military plans, but they use culture motifs. And I think the idea could be improved more than that to put in a museum. But unfortunately, I don't know what's the future of these plans. So I'm just to present some work, this 5 type of airplane. This one of them. This jewelry, and here the women participate with the man always. We don't separate women than man in this in any project actually. Here the other ones. This other project actually here, also representing culture. So I have to hurry. Here from the Oriental artists, from outside, foreign artists, try to express themselves about Omani culture. Also the mask you see in the women, she wear it. Here you see it in terms of art, visual art image. Here are the artists also from outside Oman. Here, anyway. So I put it this before. Art education, as I said before, started too early actually, compared to our country, our neighbor. Here, some date showing the art curriculum first time included in the curriculum in 1970, and national art education also in 70. Art education department opened on 1901. Also, private institution become more and more regarding the art. Anyway, this is some example of work. In the pandemic time, actually, it was hard to think you could teach art, especially art practice, through the digital media. So difficult, actually. Even we try, but what we believe about it, we have to have self-discipline in order. Not only the problem with the technology, we have to think abroad. I mean, if you don't, we don't have. Here's some example. Anyway, we have to think about the opportunities and challenge regarding the pandemic. One of the opportunities, we teach art through it, and we succeed actually. I don't know if I have time for this video, and I will be end of that, please. 1 minute. This is the result of art exhibition. All students, create their work within pandemic time. And this is the end of that in 2020 actually. And I need to, end with some recommendation actually. We all believe in art and power of art and culture. We need to expand this power more and more. If we believe in power of art, we could expand it more and more. Art alone, culture alone, not enough. We need more participation, more integration, more collaboration in order to make this power more and more. I will end up. This is some example. Also been produced with the same time. Emptiness, you see empty exhibition, but people make it. And this other example, I'm almost finished. Some recommendation. Thank you very much.
네, 모하메드 아람리 교수님 감사합니다. 다시 한번 박수 부탁드립니다. Thank you for your presentation, Professor. Please give him a big round of applause one more time. 네, 이번에도 온라인으로 참여해 주시는 분이신데요. 외로움을 해결하기 위한 정책 실험, 어려운 시기에 문화예술은 어떻게 지역사회를 지원할 수 있는가라는 주제로 영국 예술위원회의 레베카 블랙만님의 발표를 들어보겠습니다. The next speaker will also deliver a presentation online. Rebecca Blackman, Director of Engagement and Audiences at Arts Council England, will give her presentation on the topic of how can arts and culture support communities in difficult times. Hello, Rebecca Blackman.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
So, thanks very much for inviting me today. I'm really sorry I couldn't be there in person, but I'm hoping at some point in the future I'll get to visit you in Korea. So, Arts Council England have just embarked on a new 10-year strategy called Let's Create. And in fact, we were just about to start delivering this strategy when the pandemic happened. And that meant we had to change some of our plans. But the strategy itself actually helped us shape our response to the pandemic. Now, the strategy called Let's Create has 3 main outcomes. And the outcomes are creative people, that everyone can develop and express creativity throughout their life. Cultural communities, that villages, towns and cities thrive through a collaborative approach to culture, and a creative and cultural country, that the cultural sector itself is innovative and collaborative and international. But today I'm going to focus on the first 2 of these outcomes, the creative people and the cultural communities outcome. And the first thing to say is that in this strategy and the one that preceded it, we started to look much more at the evidence of who is and who isn't engaging in culture. And that evidence was through government surveys, audience data, and also at looking through where we were investing in public money. So what we saw was perhaps not surprising, but it told us that there were parts of the country where people were engaging very little in arts and culture, and also that those places often, but not always, corresponded with the places where we were not funding any cultural organisations. Now, this map that you can see on the slide, that shows the hotspots where we were investing a lot of money in red. So all those red dots represent investment. And the bigger the dot, the bigger the investment. And the brown areas are the places that the evidence told us that people were not engaging or engaging very little in arts and culture. However, we also learned that there were some places where we were investing a lot of public money, but only certain groups were accessing that offer. So broadly speaking, social groups who perhaps were more educated with higher income levels, they seemed to be accessing arts and culture much more. So in fact, we were often subsidizing the interests of the wealthier groups in society. And we could have been said to be ignoring to some extent what was happening for other groups and in other places. The only exception to that, I would say, is libraries, where a much wider social demographic engaged. And it's important to stress the importance of libraries in a genuinely universal offer. Now, because our strategy at the time we did this map back in 2011-12 was called Great Art for Everyone, and our new strategy, Let's Create, is all about creative people at all stages in their lives, we knew we had to do something about the imbalance in cultural engagement. So I'm going to talk to you today about some of the specific things we did to address this, and then how some of that activity enabled us to better pivot to respond to the pressures of the pandemic in terms of supporting communities in England. So one of the first things we did was set up a specific program called Creative People and Places. And that program was only open to the bottom 20% of engaged places in England. And we identified those places through a government survey called Active Lives. Now, this is a specifically targeted program to address some of the challenges around communities who were engaging less in culture. So it makes sense to tell you more about that program today. The ambition of the program was that more people would engage, and that both the process of engagement and the product be excellent. And we set out that the program should be led by partnerships, and the partnerships must include both community and cultural organisations. We also said that the community must have a voice in shaping the cultural offer and making decisions about the kind of activity in their place. And we were really keen that the public be empowered through this program. So the programs all had to tell us the methodology for community decision making. And we also asked that the community organisations be non-cultural ones, because that would ensure we were reaching new people. So we wanted to try new approaches, and we wanted to learn from that. So we made it an action research program. And we also asked people to think long term, because we know that change takes time. We got some really exciting applications. We had programs led by sports clubs, housing associations, food banks, community volunteer groups, theatres. And we started with 6 projects back in 2012. And now this program has grown to 41. And it includes partners like a safari park, a nuclear power station, and it involves local employers, local health services, schools, libraries, and museums. And over the 10 years since 2012, we've invested £108 million in the programme, and we've had over 7.5 million engagements. And we also ask that everyone who is involved in it takes part in peer learning, so that all the learning can be shared across the cultural sector, so it extends beyond. Now, often the places involved had very little cultural infrastructure. So I want to give you a flavour of the approach that they took. This is St Helens in this slide. It's a former industrial town in the northwest of England. And previously it was famous for making glass. And it's top of the list when it comes to negative statistics. Men in St Helens have a 10-year shorter life expectancy. People are poor. Unemployment is high. A quarter of children live in food poverty. Health outcomes are generally below average, and suicide rates are high as well. So with no or limited infrastructure, they took the approach that the whole town should become the arts centre. They commissioned a bugle call for the town, and it rang out from car parks and malls. They engaged the community in renaming places, for example, naming a park after a public vote, and they named it after a local woman who'd grown up in care. An artist, Mark Storer, committed to a 12-year artist residency in the town to outlive the shorter life expectancy, the 10-year shorter life expectancy for men. And one of the most remarkable projects he did brought together older men, police, young carers, schools, and the public. And one September day, they came together as part of a live art event with an army of young people, and he named them the Army of Beauty, who in the morning were handing out free flower posies to bemused but delighted town residents. And it was a simple gesture in this public space that provoked consideration of how public space should be used. Now, the older men in St Helens, often from social groups who were often marginalised, and who in St Helens, unfortunately, have an alarmingly high suicide rate. The artist, Mark Storer, brought together the older men into what he called the Council of Wisdom. Empty shops were adorned with their portraits that transform them, these older men, into theatrical godlike figures that demand we acknowledge their social value and their rich life experience. And here the owl representing the wisdom of this particular older man. And here in the next slide, you have John. He was a man whose big hobby was gardening, and he loved gardening. And the artist shows him coming up out of the soil, transformed. And this particular day culminated in a procession of the Army of Beauty, followed by the Council of Wisdom and flanked by flower-adorned police horses. And they marched silently on the town hall to present a statement written by one of the children, which is to become the foundation of the children's charter for the town. Now, work like this, developed in collaboration with the people of a place, speaking to their concerns, is fundamental to this approach in creative people and places. It isn't a supply model which says, hey, we've got all this great art that you should come and see because it's somehow good for you or will improve you. It's much more about taking an asset-based approach which builds on the skills and the knowledge and experience and questions of the local people and uses spaces in an unusual way. And this asset-based community development approach is something we're building in more and more to the work of creative people and places. So CPP, we call it CPP for short, Creative People and Places, has been powerful in evidencing this approach because it's a national programme and it uses evidence and data on a wider scale. So I think we could say that 10 years ago, it was leading the way in England in really trying to reach places that might ordinarily be considered low engaged. It wasn't the first time this work had ever been done, but it was the first time it had happened on a national scale like this. Now it's just reaching its 10-year anniversary, its birthday, and we commissioned Mark Robinson to pull together some of the key learning and themes. And his report is on our website. So if you're able to read English, you can take a look at that. But we've learned that essentially to be successful, it's really important to work with non-arts partners, to let communities shape the activity, to ensure it's meaningful to them, to take time to build trusting relationships, and for it to be in it for the long haul, to take the time, because you can't just parachute activity in and out if you really want to make change. And that engagement in culture can transform people's lives as well as how communities see and engage with their place. And the fact that the Creative People and Places relationships had already built these relationships meant that when the pandemic happened, they were able to support their communities and pivot really quickly when additional money became available from government, particularly to address loneliness. And I'll talk about the kind of things they did shortly. Before I do so, though, I just wanted to touch on another program we delivered that has also helped us reach and engage communities. And this one allowed us to reach older people experiencing loneliness through the pandemic. It was called Celebrating Age. And we worked on this with the Bearing Foundation. And the evidence we looked at here told us that there was a big drop-off in cultural engagement for older people over 75, particularly from some of the less engaged groups. So we worked in partnership with Bearing to develop specific programs across the country to address it. And we jointly invested £3 million. And that project included activity happening in care homes, people with dementia, in libraries, working with storytellers, theatre based on and performed by people with lived experience of dementia. And again, because we had these programs up and running when the pandemic hit, we were able quickly to get £30,000 out to each of them to address issues of loneliness. They didn't need to apply. We got the money out as we needed to be quick and trusted them to deliver. And then from October 2011, Arts Council also had responsibility for libraries. As I mentioned earlier, they've been a mainstay of support for communities, and they've done a great deal to maintain that through the pandemic. In ordinary times, they play a role tackling loneliness. They develop knit and natter clubs. People meet there. They learn to cook. They learn new skills. And in St. Helens, the place I talked about earlier, the library service delivers an award-winning arts on prescription service for adults experiencing anxiety, stress, depression, and embracing the philosophy that many health conditions have a broader social determinant. And there's an organisation called the Aleph Trust who responded immediately to the situation of lockdown in March 2020. As a team, they felt it was really important to continue to support the well-being of people on the programme, especially vulnerable people. And with the help and guidance of experts, they planned and developed and delivered an online service for the clients in St. Helens. And then in COVID, we also received an additional £3.5 million to support the reading agency deliver Reading Well, which was books on prescription and reading for friends. And that included mental health book collections for children, young people and adults, all to public libraries in England. And it supported the delivery of Reading Friends, which is a shared reading model using reading to bring people together and tackle loneliness. And an evaluation of Reading Friends found that 83% of participants, 95% of volunteers felt connected to other people after taking part. Because loneliness is a significant issue in the UK, which COVID exacerbated. The Office for National Statistics considered in the past year it's increased feelings of loneliness. 7.2% of the adult population, about nearly 4 million adults, reported feeling lonely, often or always. And some other surveys put that figure much, much higher. So it represents an enormous social challenge, but it's also a public health challenge. Research indicates loneliness is worse for us than obesity. It's roughly equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It increases the risk of depression, coronary heart disease, stroke, high blood pressure, and cognitive decline and dementia. And in fact, loneliness may increase our risk of individual death by a stark 26%. So in COVID, we received additional funds to help address it. Some of that I've already mentioned, but 1.5 million of that money went to the Creative People and Places programs I mentioned earlier and Celebrating Age programs, because they already had those trusted relationships and were able to deliver quickly. The activities they delivered would have to address specific issues around loneliness. The object of the grant was to provide immediate targeted relief to those most at risk. And they had to show at least 2 of the outcomes on this slide. And the participants who took part were surveyed directly and asked a set of questions exploring the impact of their engagement on these measures. And we received 1,444 surveys out of around 30,000 people who took part. We funded 50 programs across the country. Each of them received about £30,000, and activities included creative packs sent out to people, stories being told over the phone. The Posh Club in London in the southeast hired an open deck bus. They took groups of older people out for a 1.5 hour drive with cabaret entertainment, including a Dolly Parton impersonator and tea. In Blackpool, the Left Coast Creative People and Places programme produced editions of a creative community newspaper. They delivered it by hand to people on the doorstep. 800 older people took part in that. Some of them took part in focus group discussions about the newspaper and its impact on their loneliness and feelings of isolation. And from the second edition, they were all invited to create and submit content or put themselves forward for interview. Another programme in the East Midlands ran 3 different projects to deliver writing workshops to people from a range of age groups targeting different communities, neurodiverse people, LGBTQ people, ethnically diverse communities. They set up online sessions for autistic writers, and actually that continued because it worked so well. So even beyond towards the end of the pandemic, they actually loved meeting together because they didn't have to meet face to face, and it suited them really well. And Teleki, a London-based arts organisation, they created a radio station. Actually, they introduced twice weekly phone calls with all the participants living home alone, and they then with the Albany and who run a Meet Me at the Albany program, it spawned Meet Me on the Radio program, and it was they developed a large communal artwork that people just engaged with in a completely different way. And you can just very quickly, I haven't got long left, but you can see the impact of this type of work. You can see that it did have a significant impact. The evidence links participating in arts activity to improved well-being. Many people reported a positive impact on their well-being through having fun, developing a range of skills, and survey respondents responded to reported improvement and to their satisfaction with life. 3/4 of respondents felt their life had become more worthwhile on account of arts-based activity. Some referred to activities helping them to cope with difficult life events, particularly in lockdown, such as bereavement. Caring responsibilities were also mentioned. So it seems fitting to end with some quotes from the people who took part in some of the projects. The evidence shows engagement in arts and culture can have a positive impact on people's well-being and sense of connection. This was true when people did things together as a group, but it was also true when they did things on their own. I mean, I've spoken to you about numerous projects today, and I could have spoken about loads more projects, but it shows just what an impact arts and culture can have on communities, on them as individuals, on their sense of place, and on civic pride. And we just published a report on our website that focuses specifically on how arts organizations supported communities through the pandemic. It's a kind of toolkit with lots of links to resources. It's intended for everyone's use, so please do have a look at that. I can send over the links. I mean, investment in arts and culture is relatively small, certainly in England, but the returns can be enormous. Sometimes they're hard to measure, because how do you measure creativity? How do you measure happiness? But these are the things that make us human. These are the things that allow us both to respond to and shape our world. And these are the things that the world needs right now. So I hope that I've shared some things that might be useful to you today, and I will try and send over some further links that may give you more resources. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
네, 발제 감사합니다. Thank you for your presentation. 네, 그럼 두 분의 발제자를 모시고 이번에도 참석자분들의 질문을 들어보도록 하겠습니다. 마찬가지로 2부 시작 시 송출된 질문 링크에 참여하셔서 질문을 남겨주시기 바랍니다. Now we'll invite the two speakers and have the Q&A session once again. Just like in the first session, please leave your questions in the open chat room. 그럼 모더레이터 재환정 교수님과 두 분의 발제자를 무대로 모시겠습니다. Please welcome the moderator, Professor 환정재, and the two speakers to the stage again.
네, 다시 Q&A라서 올라왔습니다. 저는 재환정입니다. 네, 그리고 제 옆에는 모하메드 알 암리 교수님 계시고요. 줌에는 레베카 블랙만 영국 예술위원회에서 오신 블랙만 선생님이 계십니다. 저 보이실까요? Hi, can you see me? Okay, 보이시는 것 같습니다. 자, 질문이 굉장히 많이 올라왔습니다. 여기 계신 분들도 오픈 채팅창에 지금이라도 질문을 남겨주시면 저희가 시간이 허락하는 한 많이 이야기를 나눠보도록 하겠습니다. 우선 모하메드 알 암리 선생님의 발제를 보면서 저는 굉장히 오만의 문화적 정책과 더불어서 풍성한 오만의 어떤 문화 예술의 헤리티지들을 어떻게 활용하고 있는지 그런 예시들을 잘 보게 된 것 같습니다. 우리 모하메드 선생님께서는 2010년 서울 아젠다 준비 과정에서부터 함께 하셨다고 제가 들었는데, 사실 서울 아젠다를 저희가 목표를 살짝 보면 문화예술교육의 기획부터 양질을 유지한다, 또 지금처럼 세계가 직면한 사회문화적 도전과 문제를 해결하는 데 기여한다, 이런 목표가 있는데 지금 너무나 잘 와닿는 시간들이었던 것 같습니다. 그래서 개인적인 질문이지만 발제 이전에 지난 12년 동안 이 서울 아젠다의 어떤 비전이나 목표들이 어떻게 잘 수행되었다고 생각하시는지, 또 특별히 진흥어 쪽에서도 궁금해하고 계시는 부분이기도 해서 먼저 여쭤보고 시작하고 싶습니다.
It is so difficult actually to answer this question. Seoul Agenda since 2010 actually was published and in 7 languages, not only in 1 or 2 or 3, in 7 languages actually. And this big achievement to see this agenda in different language actually, including Arabic version. I'm not quite sure to how I answer this question. This big question need more survey, as we did in roadmap in UNESCO. We follow each country by questionnaire or survey to see to what extent each country implement this roadmap. And I think through Korean government, through UNESCO, we could answer this question clearly, in clear matter. I cannot say, but I think, those who read or rethink about Seoul Agenda, there is a lot of potential. There is a lot of, it is based on sustainable development. Even the word being chosen in writing this document, even the word itself, reflecting the sustainable development. If you go and read, there's a lot of ensuring, how you could ensure a lot of things by the road of the Seoul Agenda. Seoul Agenda, in general, there is like 3 goals. Each goals being translated to the 3 strategy. Each strategy being, translated to action item. If we really, I benefit a lot from this in my thinking, in my way of thinking, not just for to implementing in art. Even action item. If you achieve action item, that means you achieve the strategy. If you achieve the strategy, that means you achieve the goal. I need people to think about it twice. I benefit from this thought in my country. We established new philosophy of education or aims. Okay, I bring this thought, this frame of thought, to invent the new philosophy of teaching and learning in Oman for country. I try to benefit from this kind of framework to establish a new philosophy of education in Oman, which is work so far. I hope I answer some of your question.
네, 말씀 감사합니다. 제가 오늘은 지금은 두 분밖에 안 계셔서 질문을 좀 핑퐁처럼 주고받고 하도록 하겠습니다. 우리 줌에 계신 레베카 블랙만 선생님께도 질문을 드리고 싶은데요. 선생님 발제를 들으면서 문화예술 교육과 창의성이라는 것이 외로움과 고립이라는 문제에 어떻게 해결을 하거나 대응할 수 있을지를 좀 많이 생각하게 되는데요. 실제로 한국에서도 이제 팬데믹 이후에 외로움이 민주주의를 위협한다라는 그런 김만권 교수님의 글이 굉장히 큰 반향을 일으켰거든요. 그래서 한국이 굉장히 요새 어떤 혐오와 차별의 문제가 사회 이슈로 되고 있는데 이것이 어떤 고립이나 평등이나 우리가 연대를 상실할 때 굉장히 이런 편견이나 혐오에 빠지기 쉽다라는 주장을 하셨거든요. 그래서 지금 발제해 주셨던 외로움에 대한 것, 고립에 대한 어떤 대응으로서의 예술적 활동, 창의적 활동이 굉장히 중요한 사회적인 역할이 아닐까라는 생각을 좀 하게 됐습니다. 그래서 물론 굉장히 영국 예술위원회에서 연구도 많이 하시고 그런 것들을 기반으로 하고 계시겠지만 이런 사회적 이슈가 이렇게 긴 장기적인 비전을 가지고 굉장히 전방위적으로 할 수 있도록 견인하게 되는 어떤 구체적인 노력 혹은 사회적 합의 그런 사전 작업이 있었다면 어떤 것이 있었을지 물론 연구 같은 것들이 있었겠지만 좀 더 구체적으로 어떤 노력들이 있었기에 이런 프로젝트가 현실화될 수 있었을지 좀 직접 여쭤보고 싶습니다.
Sorry, I have to take the mute button off. Thank you for the question. So what have we done to tackle loneliness? And I think the questioner is right. It's about connecting people and connecting groups in society together. So for us, I think it's really key that we work in partnership with other civil society organizations, community organizations, because working together, we're more powerful, we're stronger in reaching different groups of people. So in terms of what Arts Council England's done around loneliness, I think there's a number of things. So the partners, we're working with partners like the National Health Service. We're a partner in the National Academy for Social Prescribing, which is lots of people visit their doctors in England, not really with medical issues, but often social issues. And as I said, the evidence shows that those social issues can then impact on their health. So we're working in partnership to develop social prescribing approaches, which means that instead of being given drugs and medicine by your doctor, you might be referred to a link worker who can then connect you with arts and cultural organizations, or even indeed other activity, nature, wildlife organizations, walking, to connect you with different kinds of activity that may help your well-being and connect you to other people. So we're building partnerships. In our new strategy, we've also asking everyone who applies to us for funding, we've set out a number of investment principles. And one of those is inclusivity and relevance. So anyone who applies to us for our funding will need to demonstrate how they are making sure that the activity that is on offer to the public and through their work is inclusive and relevant. And part of that includes things that I talked about in my presentation, which is that the public might get to shape activity, to have a say in the kind of activity on offer to them, and in giving people a voice in the kind of activity they want. Then that makes that helps to make sure that the activity on offer can really help to change their lives. Those are some of the things we're doing. There are lots of fantastic arts organizations who are already doing all of this and have been doing it for years. But I think the difference we're making is by bringing it together in a national strategy and in national approaches and collecting the evidence, because the other way we can help is by collating national evidence that we can then use to show government and others that this is effective. Because, not only is it good, should we morally be doing this because it's good for society and it's good to have happier, healthier citizens, but also it's actually cost effective in terms of health as well. So I think we operate on a number of levels in brokering that.
I have a question for you, please. I enjoyed your project actually, and I was surprised that you target for creativity, for people to be more creativity. And as I don't know, believe or that sometimes we said there is a phrase, education for all, creativity for some. How you bring creativity to this project?
Yeah, we do believe in creativity for everyone. We believe everyone is creative and everyone has the right to develop their creativity at every stage in their lives. So in our delivery plan for the new strategy, we're looking at the evidence to see who's been missing out, what groups have been missing out. And I think we'll be focusing on early years children, very young children. So we're doing a number of programs where we're looking at how we can support them to develop their creativity. But we're also looking at the other end of the life span. Older people often miss out, often get forgotten. And even older people in care homes, we're looking at how we can work with people in those groups. And actually, the three outcomes I talked about in the strategy, the first one, creative people, is we're actually also exploring, we talk about something called everyday creativity. That people, it doesn't mean everyone has to be a professional artist, but lots of people do things in their own time, in their homes, in amateur groups, voluntary groups, and we really want to encourage that. We think that's really important for us as a nation, and we want to encourage that. And so as part of our strategy, we're embedding everyday creativity much more. And we're just commissioning a piece of work, which is looking at, we're just starting that off. I mean, we've already done some historically, but we're looking more at how can we make sure this happens more effectively across the whole country? What are the gaps? Again, there are some groups who are not really engaging, who might feel excluded or think it's not for them. So we're looking at how can we reach those groups and encourage them to take part. So in the Creative People and Places project I talked about, they do all kinds of brilliant activity, but some of them will talk to groups and say, are there things you'd like to try? Are there things you'd like to test out? And then they will set up classes and in local community halls, and people will start learning to wood carve or, do art, or it could be whatever the community decide they want to do. And we've got some lovely stories of people. We have some brilliant stories, actually, of people who were homeless, who got involved in the Creative People and Places project, started engaging and doing activity themselves, and actually it's completely transformed their lives. I was speaking to someone the other day who had come through a homeless charity and is now working to support other homeless people to access arts and culture. So you can see through all these little interventions in small places, it's really starting to make a difference and connect people. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, yes. Creativity by their own self.
굉장히 흥미로운 대화가 오가고 있는데요. 사실 다른 문화권에서 다른 백그라운드를 가지고 있기 때문에 우리 모두가 문화예술 교육을 통해서 창의성, 크리에이티비티라는 것의 의미가 조금씩은 다를 수도 있겠다는 생각이 듭니다. 그래서 지금 서구를 비롯한 많은 문화권에서는 창의성이라는 것 자체가 청소년이나 아이뿐만 아니라 전 인구의 나이듦에 대해서도 이야기하고 있는 중이어서 사실은 이게 꼭 모든 문화권에 해당되지는 않을 수도 있겠다는 생각이 들어서 이 대화가 훨씬 더 재미있게 저는 들리고 있습니다. 자, 저희가 또 오디언스 쪽에서 질문들이 계속 올라와서 두 분께 또 질문을 좀 드리고 싶은데요. 오픈 채팅창에서 주셨던 질문인데 우리 모하메드 알 암리 선생님께 드리고 싶습니다. 문화예술 교육이 우리가 이것도 창의성처럼 좀 맥락이 다를 수도 있겠는데요. 다양성과 공존에 대해서 항상 이야기를 하는데 오만의 오래된 전통과 종교적인 어떤 전통들이 안에서 이 다양성의 균형이 어떻게 유지되고 지지되고 있는지 궁금하다 이런 질문 주셨습니다.
Diversity, we deal with diversity by peace way. I mean, even we have in Oman different religions, different background, different. Sometimes people don't feel anything that there is distinguish between them. Even in the school, in the school there is no distinguish between them. Even I don't feel it when I was young. Sometimes I go to other mosques, for example, to pray, and I don't know these people from different root, or from different background, or from different ethnics. Okay, really, I mean, we treat them equally in universities. Human right, all human right, it's available for everybody. Education free for everybody. And I don't know, I mean, in terms of art also, I mean, even the foreign artists, we give them like a membership, free membership to be in that free, I mean, to participate in culture event or in award or composition, not only for Omani people, just for all people who are in the nation or in the Oman. I don't think we have this issue of diversity, of even like in different places. Sometimes diversity making thing difficult because you have different opinion, different people, different may costing more problematic issue. You cannot unite them in terms of thought or in terms of thinking or in terms of the practicing their own art. So I don't think, I mean, we so happy, I mean, so far. But the issue is not easy to answer it, I mean, in small question. It depends on what in specific you prefer, I mean, for the education, for culture, for different sectors, you know?
네, 사실 문화예술 교육이라는 단어조차도 사실 공통의 언어는 아니고 각 국가나 문화마다 좀 다르게 불릴 정도로 우리가 하는 일과 맥락이 조금씩 다를 수 있기 때문에 저희가 국제 컨퍼런스에서 이런 재미있는 대화를 나눌 수 있는 것 같습니다. 시간이 아쉽게도 너무 없어서 마지막 질문을 우리 선생님께 드려야 될 것 같습니다. 레베카 블랙만 선생님께 마지막 질문 드리겠는데요. 저희 오픈 채팅창에 올라온 질문입니다. 네, 스칼렛이라는 분이 올려주셨는데요. 브렉시트 이후로 영국에 좀 등장하기 시작한 민족주의나 어떤 혹시 다양성의 대치가 있다면 이에 대해서는 어떻게 생각하시는지 궁금하다고 질문 주셨습니다. 또 혹시 브렉시트로 인한 문화예술 교류에 있어서 변화가 있는지도 좀 궁금하다고 질문하셨습니다.
I just so as at Arts Council England, we are an arm's length organisation from government. So we need, but we need to. We're obviously our role is to implement in many ways the policies of a democratically elected government, regardless of our own, personal views. But having said that, I think the evidence suggests Brexit isn't without its challenges. But you'll see that in the strategy, the third outcome that we have is around creative and cultural country, and that we have said that we want the cultural sector to be innovative, collaborative, and international. And international relationships are incredibly important to us at Arts Council England, and we're working really hard to maintain those international partnerships in light of Brexit. So that's the first thing I would want to say. The other thing where you've asked about nationalism and the tensions that has arisen, I think what I would point you to is our strategy and our investment principles, where we have said inclusivity and relevance is absolutely fundamental to what we are seeking to deliver through Let's Create. Let's Create is very much focused on reaching groups of people who have maybe previously felt or been excluded from arts and culture. And we want everyone to feel that arts and culture and creativity is for them. So that's really important to us. So I think what arts and culture can do is, where those kind of things arise, arts and culture can play a really important role in bringing people together, in connecting people, in facilitating conversations and dialogue between people. And I think, we funded a lot of projects that bring people together within one small community in a place. There's lots of examples of that, which it helps them connect, understand each other, experience each other's cultures. Similarly, we've also funded programs that are focused on intercultural dialogue. So we're the program Creative People and Places that I talked to you about. We're actually working on a program with Germany, where we're looking at exchange and bringing partners together from different countries to look at how we can deliver that kind of work together and share the learning that we have together. So what I would say is, where those challenges do arise that you've talked about, arts and culture has a real role to play in connecting and bringing people together and supporting that dialogue. I hope that answers your question.
네, 되게 질문에 답변 감사합니다. 우리 모두가 하고 있는 일을 명명하는 방식은 다르지만, 곤란에 빠진 지구별과 또 팬데믹 이후에 고립되고 있는 인류를 연결하기 위해서 무언가 하고 있다는 것은 굉장히 공감을 많이 하게 됐습니다. 좋은 답변 감사하고요. 시간이 조금 모자라서 아쉽지만 여기서 Q&A 세션은 마무리해야 될 것 같습니다. 우리 레베카 블랙만 선생님, 또 모하메드 알 암리 선생님, 좋은 답변 주셔서 감사합니다.
네, 모두 감사합니다. 세계 5개국의 문화예술교육 분야의 학계, 현장 전문가, 문화예술교육자가 모여 의견을 교환하는 자리가 되었습니다. 발제를 해주신 5분 모두에게 감사드리며 질문을 이끌어주신 재환정 교수님께도 감사 말씀드립니다. Thank you all Today's event has become a place where academics, field experts, and culture and arts educators from 5 countries around the world gathered and exchanged their ideas. I'd like to thank all the 5 speakers who gave their inspiring presentations, and I'd also like to thank Professor Hwan Jung-jae for hosting the Q&A session. 네, 이것으로 2022년 세계문화예술교육주간 국제 심포지엄을 모두 마치도록 하겠습니다. 참여해주신 모든 분들께 감사 말씀드립니다. It's time to wrap up the International Symposium of the 2022 International Arts Education Week. Thank you very much for being with us today. Thank you.